dear Consul General of Levent Bilgen, keynote speakers, colleagues, and friends of Turkey, brothers, sisters, my friends, welcome to 9th annual Stop the Armenian Lies and Remembering the Fallen Heroes rally. And on behalf of Young Turks Association, we are honored to organize this event in Times Square today. The objective of our rally is to protest Armenian propaganda and big lies that Armenian diaspora is generating on the public and in Congress. The so-called genocide allegations are used as a political instrument by Armenian diaspora against Turkey. As young Turks, along with Turkish American community, we are and will work harder to demonstrate that Turkey is a country who believes peace and has an honorable history. We are condemning Asala terrorism that killed our Turkish diplomats between 1973 and 1986. Turkey is the just only one country all around the world lost 39 diplomats, 39 shaheeds. There is one only country, Turkey. We are commemorating Turkish diplomats who were victims or murders of Armenian militant organization, Asala. Armenian militant organizations staged more than 200 attacks on the 4 continents in 21 countries. Genocide is a legal term. The only legally recognized genocides are Holocaust, Rwandan genocide, and Srebrenica Bosnian genocide. Armenia, stop playing cheap political games. Armenia, stop lying. Armenian genocide story is fiction. Brutal murders of 39 Turkish officers by Armenian terrorists from 1973 and 1986 is reality. So-called Armenian genocide is a lie of the century. No more lies! No more lies! No more lies! Let me see your flags! Let me see your flags! Raise up the flags! Raise up the flags! No more lies! Ethnicide, mass deception, not genocide. Jewish Holocaust is a fact. So-called Armenian genocide is a fiction. Where is the court verdict for genocide? What about the Turkish suffering? Turkish losses are 4 times heavier than the Armenians. What I can neither accept nor respect is any claim, direct or implied, that one of the greatest lies of modern history did actually happen. I say to those Armenian diaspora, prove it, prove it. If you cannot, then simply just shut up. The Holocaust is a legal fact. Armenian genocide has no legal basis. I repeat, it's just an allegation with no supporting evidence. Armenian lobby is bullying the Congress to rewrite the history based on unfounded claims. This is against American interest. Turkey is a loyal American ally, providing support to the American troops fighting with terrorists in Iraq and Afghanistan. The American government has no business rewriting the history of an ally and insulting them with lies. My friends, I am going to ask you some simple questions. If we answer the yes, we are going to quit. I'm going to ask the main questions about the so-called Armenian genocide. If you say yes, okay. If you say no, altogether, we're going to say no. Okay, question. Was Eastern Anatolia the original homeland of the Armenians? Second question, simple. Everybody gotta listen this. Did the Turks take the lands of the Armenians by force? Have the Turks always attacked and misruled Armenians throughout history? Did the Turks really try to massacre the Armenians starting in the 1890s? Did the Turks undertake a planned and systematic massacre of the Armenians in 1915? Did Talat Pasha send secret telegrams ordering massacres? Did 1.5 million Armenians die during World War I? The Ottoman and the French census says 1915 Armenian population is 1.1 million. So let's do some math. Let's count some numbers. 300,000 Armenians migrate to Syria. 700,000 Armenians stay in Anatolia. So 1 million. Around 60,000 Armenians migrate to United States here. So let's add and minus. And final, we are not saying this, French census says, and 1915, so final, their losses, almost 280,000 Armenians. My friends, Turks lost 4 million lives between 1914 and 1922. We lost 4 million lives. Tomorrow, that's the 29th anniversary of the assassination of the Turkish diplomat in Tehran, Iran. April 28, 1984, the Armenian terrorist organization killed Işık Gönder, who works in the Turkish Ateşi. My friends, we haven't created any terrorist organization kill the Armenians. We lost the lives. And there is one thing, we believe that. I'm the president of the Young Turks. I see you guys from the Turkish American community. I got the visitor over here. I got the guest over here. But there is one thing, one important thing. U.S. Congress and Senate and the media cannot judge you, me. We cannot talk about it deeply. But let the history to the historians. I'm going to invite you, Mr. Michael Günther. He's a professor at the Tennessee Technical University at the Political Science Department. But one more thing, this one I cannot say in English. I gotta say in Turkish. Arkadaş, yurduma alçakları uğratma sakın. Siper et gövdeni, dursun bu hayasızca akın. Doğacaktır sana vaat ettiği günler hakkın. Kim bilir, belki yarın, belki yarından da yakın.
Başkanımıza teşekkür ediyoruz. Mr. Michael Günther, the Tennessee Tech University Political Science Professor. Please, sir. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederim. I'm very happy to be here. See the sea of beautiful Turkish and Azeri flags. I wanted to share a few highlights from a recent article I wrote for Middle East Quarterly. Can you hear me? I wrote a recent article trying to show how, although many Armenians unfortunately did die in World War I, it is not appropriate to term this genocide, because the international law definition of genocide has not prevented journalists, activists, and even scholars from misusing the term and describing practically every conflict that has resulted in large numbers of civilian deaths, including Bosnia, Burundi, Cambodia, Chechnya, Colombia, Guatemala, Iraq, Sudan, and Rwanda are all examples. Indeed, the concept of genocide has also been employed incorrectly in an ex post facto manner to describe the Athenian massacre of the inhabitants of Milos in 146 BC, the Roman destruction of Carthage in 416, the Mongol sacking of Baghdad in 1258, the Vendée massacres during the French Revolution in 1793, the fate of the Native American Indians have been called genocide, the German suppression of the Herero uprising in Southwest Africa in 1904, the Armenians in 1915, Stalin's induced famine in the Ukraine during the early 1930s, as well as the results of his various deportations. South Africa's apartheid policies have been called genocide. Israel's policies toward the Palestinians, Kosovar treatment of their Serb minority, and of course vice versa. And even the U.S. dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War I, as well as the actions of the former dictator of Chile, Augusto Pinochet, and the collective suicide of Jim Jones and his 910 disciples in Guyana in 1978, among many other examples. As a matter of fact, during the fighting in August 2008, both Russia and Georgia also accused each other of genocide. So you see, the term has been used and misused by many. Obviously, the term genocide applied to all these very different historical events raises numerous semantic objections and stimulates even more heated controversies. Too often has the accusation of genocide been made simply for the emotional effect or to make a political point, with the result that more and more events have been claimed to be genocide, to the point that the term has lost its original meaning. Whether use of the term genocide is justified or not, the word aims to strike our imagination, awaken our moral conscience, and mobilize public opinion on behalf of the victims. Under these circumstances, anyone daring to suggest that what is going on is not really genocide is immediately accused of weakness or sympathizing with the aggressors. Thus, the term genocide has been used as a propaganda tool by becoming the hinge for venomous rhetoric against a sworn enemy. Given the powerful emotional charge the word genocide generates, it can be used and reused in all sorts of hate talk to heap international opprobrium on whoever is accused of genocidal intent. The obvious conclusion: the word genocide is used as much as a symbolic shield to claim victim status for one's people, as well as a sword raised against one's enemy. What then of the Armenian case? Unfortunately, most Turkish and Armenian scholars are unable to be objective on this issue. The main point I am trying to make is not to deny that Turks killed Armenians. They certainly did. To prove genocide, however, intent or premeditation must be demonstrated, and in this case it has not. In addition, of course, our understanding must also include that what occurred was not just a unilateral Turkish action, but part of a long-term process in which some Armenians were guilty of killing as many Turks as they could in their attempts to rebel. Arnold Toynbee, the renowned historian who co-edited the Blue Book compilation of Turkish atrocities during World War I with Lord Bryce, later wrote, however, in the redistribution of Near and Middle Eastern territories, the atrocities which have accompanied it from the beginning have been revealed in their true light as crimes which all parties have committed in turn, and not as peculiar practices of one group or a nationality. Indeed, in his final statement on the subject, Arnold Toynbee declared, "These Armenian political aspirations had not been legitimate. Their aspirations did not merely threaten to break up the Turkish Empire. They could not be fulfilled without doing grave injustice to the Turkish people itself." In addition, Admiral Mark Bristol, the U.S. High Commissioner and then ambassador to Turkey during World War I, wrote in a long cable to the U.S. State Department in 1920, "Well, the Turks were all that people said they were. The other side of the coin was obscured by the flood of Greek and Armenian propaganda, painting the Turks as completely inhuman and undeserving of any consideration, while suppressing all facts in favor of the Turks and against the minorities." Why then do most scholars accept uncritically the Armenian version of these events and demonize those who object? Why do the Turks continue to maintain their innocence in the face of so much reputed evidence? First of all, one must realize that the Armenian massacres in 1915 did not just suddenly occur out of the blue, but followed decades of Armenian violence and revolutionary activity that then elicited Turkish counter-violence. There are many Turkish sources documenting these unfortunate events. However, more accessible to Western audiences are the studies by such eminent Western scholars as William Langer and Arnold Toynbee, among many others. Armenians, too, have documented copiously that these sometimes gave as well as they received. See, for example, Louis Nalbandian, James Mandelian, and Armen Garo, among other Armenian writers. The Armenians, of course, present themselves as freedom fighters in these earlier events, but the objective scholar can understand how the Turks saw them as revolutionary and treasonous, and thus hesitate to characterize their response in 1915 as genocide. Moreover, throughout all these events, the Armenians were never more than a large minority, even in their historic provinces they inhabited. Yet the Armenians exaggerated their numbers before World War I and their losses during the war. Indeed, if the Armenian figures for those who died were correct, there would have been few Armenians left in the world at the end of the war. Instead, the Armenians managed to fight yet another war against the emerging Turkish Republic following World War I for mastery in eastern Anatolia. After the Armenians lost, many Armenians in time came to claim that what had occurred after World War I was simply renewed genocide. The Turks, on the other hand, saw it as part of their war of independence and understandably hesitate to admit guilt for all these events. Furthermore, as Christians, the Armenians naturally found a sympathetic audience in the West. The Muslim Turks, on the other hand, were the historic enemy of the Christian West. In addition, the Armenians were much more adept in foreign languages than the Turks, not like today when so many Turkish people I speak to speak good English. In those days, no. And thus the Armenians were able to present their case more readily to the rest of the world. When the events in question occurred, the Turks were again the enemy of the West and the object of Western propaganda and at times crude Orientalism. In conclusion, without denying the tragic massacres the Armenians suffered during World War I, it is also important to place them in their proper context. When this is done, the application of the term genocide to these tragic events is inappropriate because the Turkish actions were neither unilateral nor premeditated. Rather, what happened to the Armenians was part of a long continuing process that actually started at least back with the Russo-Turkish War in 1877. In this war, the Russian victory led to ethnic cleansing of Muslims from the Balkans and the removal of many surviving Muslims to Anatolia, where relations with the indigenous Christian Armenians suffered. In addition, the Armenian Patriarch Nurses, an Ottoman citizen and one of the leaders of the Armenian Millet, entered into treasonous negotiations with the victorious Russians with an eye to achieving Armenian autonomy or even independence. However, nowhere in the land claimed by the Armenians from the Ottomans were the Armenians anywhere near a majority. Still, some Armenians continued to agitate, using terror to provoke retaliation that they hoped would be followed by European intervention. In August 1896, for example, Armenian terrorists struck the Ottoman Bank in Istanbul in a misguided attempt to force the Western powers to intervene on their behalf. When World War I broke out, some Armenians supported the Russian enemy. Armen Garo, an Armenian member of the Ottoman Parliament, joined the Armenian volunteers serving under the Russian army against the Ottomans. As the testimony of Hovhannes Kachachnuni, the first prime minister of Armenia after World War I, makes clear, this is the Armenian prime minister himself, saying that some Armenians killed as many Turks as they could in a misguided attempt to strike for independence. As for the Armenian contention that the huge loss of Armenian lives illustrates premeditation, what then should be said about the enormous loss of Turkish lives among civilians, soldiers, and prisoners of war. Were these Turkish deaths also genocide, or rather due to sheer incompetence, neglect, starvation, and disease? Even so, the Armenian communities in such large Western cities as Istanbul and Izmir were largely spared deportation, probably because they were not in a position to aid the invading Russians like those Armenians who were deported in the East. Is it possible to imagine Hitler sparing any Jews in Berlin, Munich, or Cologne from his genocidal rampage for similar reasons? If, as the Armenians allege, the Turkish intent was to subject their Armenian victims to a premeditated, forced march until they died of exhaustion, why was this tactic not imposed on all the Armenians? Therefore, without denying outright murders and massacres, it seems reasonable, appropriate to question the validity of referring to the Armenian tragedy as genocide. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Günter. 1 second. We have a little gift. Değerli arkadaşlar, Ankara'dan Anıtkabir'den Ulu Önderimiz Atatürk'ün renklendirilmiş resimleri olduğu bir küçük kitapçık. Bu sene derneğimizin 20. kuruluş yılı. Onun için huzurlarınızda Michael Günter'e takdim edeceğim. Değerli arkadaşlar, maalesef daha önce de söyledim. Diyorlar ki Cenk her sene buradan şikayet ediyor. Evet, şikayet ediyorum. Çünkü rakılı dansözlü, şarkıcılı eğlencelere insanlar koşa koşa gidiyor. Vatan için, bayrak için canlarını vermiş şehitlerimiz için sizin gibi güzel yürekli insanlar haricindekiler maalesef gelmiyor. Size şikayet ediyorum bu gelmeyenlere. Buradan memleketimizin de manzarasına bakıyoruz. Memleketimizi de karıştırmak istiyorlar. Ama işte buradan gazeteci arkadaşlarımız, televizyoncu arkadaşlarımız, Türkiye'ye mesajımız olsun. Amerika'da sağcısı, solcusu, Alevisi, Sünnisi, Türk'ü, Laz'ı, Çerkes'i hep beraber bir arada şehitlerimizi anıyoruz. Her sene de anmaya devam edeceğiz. Şimdi bu vesileyle Türk-Amerikan Dernekleri Federasyonumuzun başkanı Sayın Ali Çınar'ı sahneye davet ediyorum.
Dear Consul General Levent Bilgen, community leaders, friends of Turkey. First of all, on behalf of Federation of Turkish American Association, we would like to thank you, Young Turks, to organize this event. Federation of Turkish American Association, representing 60 component associations, expresses its deep disappointment in President Obama's repeat of the same one-sided and historically inaccurate pronouncement as he does on April 24th to appease certain hateful single-issue Armenian groups. Federation will again send a package of books and documents to the White House in the hope that they will be read and in the office of the presidency is not used again for such dissemination of the half-truths. This brutal period of shared history, during which time innocent Ottoman Turks suffered even more losses, many at the hands of Armenians fighting under Russian uniforms, requires more reflection. Repeating narratives that are not based on solid scholarly findings, citing inflated Armenian casualty figures, and unjustly allocating the total time blame for this strategy and the Ottoman Turkish side serves to reinforce each side's current position and damages the chance for reconciliation. The tragedies of the 19th and 20th century inflicted on Ottoman populations as the empire was collapsing must not be forgotten. As we all see